everyone, my name is Avinash.
This is Mugdha and welcome to the Embracing the Human Experience podcast.
Episode number?
We are highly confused if this is 15 or 16, both of us can't remember. But the serial number doesn't matter. We're talking about another way of experiencing human life, and this is an interesting one. You want to continue about why this is an interesting one, this particular topic that we're going to talk about today?
I know, like all of us have in design or innate design is to respond to certain unpleasant situation in either freeze, flight or fight mode.
Or fawn. There are 4.
Okay, I didn't know. Or fawn. So there are 4 modes in which we respond to certain situation, and if you notice the characteristics of these particular responses, none of them are desirable in the long run, especially if it blocks you from experiencing your
but like what are we really talking about, right? Like that like main topic of the conversation.
Okay, we are already talking about the response to that particular thing. Okay, it can get you into unpleasant situation, so to say.
But basically what we are discussing today is conflict, right?
Yes.
Fights, conflicts, disagreements, relationally, whether it's in an intimate relationship like the one Avinash and I have, or whether it's in a professional relationship like the one Avinash and I have, or whether it's in a friendship like the one Avinash and I have. Yes. So, I think we both have a template for all sorts of relationships. But basically, conflict itself, right? Like, how do you deal with conflict when it arises? Because it is going to arise. When two humans, two individuals come together, we come with our own stuff, okay? We come with our own wounds, we come with our own knowledge, we come with our own egos, our personality types, our archetypes, our spirit selves, everything, right? Like we are a whole universe walking in a human form. And when two universes collide, there is going to be some degree of friction. So conflict is natural. How we respond to it, how we react to it, and how we repair after it, really what determines whether the relationship continues or not. So that's what we're going to talk about. And you were saying most people don't like it also.
Yeah, I know. I mean, you talked about collusion. I just remembered Big Bang Theory. Okay, Big Bang happened and the new universe was created apparently, or new world was created out of it. So the conflict can also be constructive in a way if you do it properly. Like if you deal with it properly, not by running away or not by freezing or not by fighting your way out. It's more to do with two mature individuals or two mature organizations or two mature countries or two mature leadership. They can sit down, talk it out, resolve and help whatever issue has come up, deal with it, maybe use it as a trigger, and then you deal with that trigger to grow yourself, to evolve out of that situation. So conflicts are not necessarily has to be avoided all the time. Sometimes you just have to bring out your stuff, as Mugdha was talking about. All of us carry our own stuff, our own upbringing, our own prejudices, the way we have been conditioned by the society, the school system, the parents and everyone who is around us. And we come from a different background, and when we are together for professional reason, personal reason, out of choice or forced to be with each other, you need to look at that in that perspective. So what are the ways in which the conflict can arise, Multa? Like there are so many things we talk about. Somewhere, what I feel is somewhere when your basic flaws are triggered, it's a kind of trigger, or it is something to do with your premise on which, or your value system getting challenged, or is it something to do with you feel threatened, one feel threatened?
So always threat, right? Like the underlying perception of threat is what is like where you become defensive.
I am envious of you. Like you can sit like this, I can't. I am jealous of you.
This is yoga, the blessing of yoga. But
I also do yoga.
Okay. All right. You take time to get to where I am. But anyway, I think what underlies every situation of conflict is the feeling of being threatened. Because when you get threatened, your defenses get activated. When your defenses get activated, you are going to like in that defensive mode, you're going to either attack or you're going to like kind of retaliate or something like that. And that's when the conflict happens, right? Now, so conflict can only happen if there are two parties who are agreeing to be in conflict. If one goes defensive and attacks and whatever, and the other one just receives that and like
Runs away.
running away is still one of the responses, right? But even if that person is present, but
Receiving.
without their own defense mechanisms getting activated, there is no conflict.
So you can't fight with a wood or
Or like if my daughter says something nasty to me, it doesn't trigger anything at all, right? So I'm chill, so there's no fight. Had I responded to her and said something and like it would have become big drama, right? So conflict will only happen when two humans bring their defense mechanisms on, or they put their defense mechanisms on. Even national conflict, whatever, is like two countries, two people fighting with each other, right? So only when two people agree that okay, we have got to fight this out is when conflict happens. People get scared of conflict because it's really intense, right, energetically, and it activates so many emotions that often leave you feel depleted, like anger and overwhelm and sadness happens, and like so many different emotions, guilt, shame, everything will start off, and that leaves you feeling depleted at the end of it. Or usually there is some kind of a loss at the end of conflict, usually, typically the way conflict is dealt with, and people don't like that loss that they experience after conflict, right? So people are very conflict averse. They just don't want fights. They want that, even if it is a facade of peace, even if it's fake peace, right? Like everything that you dislike about whatever is happening is brushed under the carpet, but on top it's all like happy, smiley. People are okay with that. Forget people. I remember, like, see, I've always been branded as an angry, rebellious person even when I was younger. But I remember in many parts of my married life, like there were situations, right? Like maybe like with people, or I'd be at parties, or I'd be somewhere where I would really not enjoy that company or that group of people or the conversations. And I would want to leave, but I knew that if I said that to my current ex-husband or even to his parents or whatever, there'd be a lot of resistance. Or even my own parents, if I said, oh, I didn't want to come for this particular wedding, I didn't want to come to this relative's house, there would be some degree of conflict. So to avoid that conflict and to avoid the fight, I would just go and then hate the time I would spend there, right? So I've done that. I've avoided conflict myself. Just in an attempt to maintain peace, and it never worked out well for myself. What is your experience with conflict been?
I think I have always run away from conflict, maybe because I didn't see it as output driven the way it has been done with many people, many of us, that the way we approach a conflict, we don't have an output in mind, we don't have an end goal in mind. People get into a conflict just to satisfy their ego, or just to score some points, or just to bring out the past baggage and dump it onto other person's head. So most of the time that nature of conflict itself leaves everyone depleted, and nothing comes out of no one gets benefit out of that conflict. People are forced to settle score, people are forced to bring out their baddest part of themselves and put it in front of others. That itself put you into a lot of shame and guilt after the conflict.
Because you usually go on your worst
behavior. Like you will choose words which is meant to hurt someone else. You will choose the argument which is most stupid if you look at it in a normal settings. Or you will bring out something which is supposed to be a confidential stuff between two parties who are fighting. You bring it out into the public. So whatever I have seen of conflict since my childhood, it has always been like two countries fighting over nothing. Like you just get into a fight just because you want to show off your ammunition, or you want to please your population, okay, I am fighting for you, or you want to bring other party into submission. So it was always about showing that power which you don't have. It's not even the power that you have that you're trying to show to the other person. So since my childhood, I have seen my parents fighting over nothing. In fact, it was the other way around. Like my father used to fight over nothing. Like he used to fight with everyone. He used to fight with us for nothing. Like we were kids. So all those memories of childhood, as we have seen, like the trauma that is being created, the pattern which is being formed, the conditioning which we get as a kids. So all that led me to believe that the conflict is a useless phenomena. It's a fruitless exercise. To use that, proper word is intellectual masturbation. If at all people get into an argument or get into a disagreement. So what I have seen is whether it is a professional conflict, whether it is a personality conflict, whether it is a international conflict, ultimately everyone stands to lose. No
In
one
the
wins.
past, that's what you've seen.
What I have seen is like everyone loses. No one gets benefited, whether it is war, whether it is ghar ke jhagde, whether it is any professional rivalry also. So everyone loses in that conflict. So I started conflict averse. My nature became conflict averse. And that led to another problem. When I went into my marriage, I was like conflict. I wanted to avoid conflict at all cost. And what happens then? Then you start submitting, as you were mentioning. You start submitting, but submitting has no limit. Like you will keep submitting forever. Still, the other party will still want you to
As
submit
long
more.
as you're alive, you'll keep getting trampled on and trampled on and trampled on. Right?
Exactly. So when that point came, whether no more submission was possible, and I started standing up for myself, that conflict became like a war. Like you're actually shooting each other and fighting and physically getting abusive, and it was actually like a war. You keep fighting, use weapons, bring out your past and bring out your parentage and bring out your family. You bring everything, your worst behavior you bring in front of everyone. So it doesn't remain inside the four wall, it goes into the public, it goes into your professional domain. So that kind of conflict led me to believe that conflicts are again fruitless. Even if I want to stand up for myself, there are other ways of doing it. I don't want to get into a conflict with someone, because the way you want to get into a conflict to find a positive outcome is not always other party's intention. So that brings us to the point. A two-party needs to be in an agreement what kind of conflict they want, whether they want an output out of it or they just want to vent out their
Right.
feelings.
So I don't think two parties also always are in agreement about what kind of conflict they are signing up. See, you and I, when we get into a conflict situation, right, where maybe my belief systems felt threatened or my identity felt threatened by something you said or something you did, often not with what you did, more with what you said, because I get triggered around certain constructs that are there in my mind, right? Sometimes with things that you do also. So there is conflict between us, right? And sometimes you get triggered, like you feel like you need to stand your ground when your integrity is questioned or when your capabilities are questioned, right? With me, I don't think there's ever been a question of your freedom being under threat, but so there has been conflict, right? Like at a professional level, at a personal level, we've gone through different phases around like keeping our boundaries intact, like standing up for ourselves without like completely losing ourselves to each other. So the way that like what I see is a big differentiator in how it is with you is it's very solution oriented. Not that it's intense, right? There is a certain degree of all sorts of feelings that come up: anger, guilt, shame, and the defensive mechanisms that get triggered by these emotions. But I think both you and I never ever do it with the intention of hurting, like causing harm to the other party. It's done from a place of, okay, something's bothering, something's troubling me, there is friction. How do we smooth this out without putting a carpet or a rug over it, right? Because we are not hiding from the issues. We are bringing those issues out in the forefront in an attempt to solve them and resolve them. So that kind of conflict feels very, very different to me, right? And the best part about our conflict is, I know that once this moment of conflict passes, however long it is, right? Whether it's like a 1 minute conversation or whether it's 5 minutes or whether it's like an hour also of discussion and debate, I know at the end of it, both of us hold enough space for each other to repair. And like for the kindness and the compassion we actually have most of the time. That knowledge or that feeling, ki this is temporary and that is what is more
permanent.
There is nothing permanent, but at least there is a sense of permanence with that. To me, that is what allows for really being vulnerable and saying that, you know, this is something that caused me pain or this hurt me, knowing full well that it can actually create a full situation of conflict. So yeah, that's how it has been for me now with you. Not many people in my life, again, I have at the same space, right? Like where the conflict can happen from a resolution point of view. How is it for you now?
So conflict that word itself has become like very conflicting. Like if there is a conflict, there has to be a bloodbath. That is what the idea of conflict is all about. The people I deal with, the relationship that I had, the relationship that I have, the conflict is always about showing other person down. It was never about resolving something or never about bringing out your stuff and looking at it. Like a few days back, I was telling someone how we deal with conflict is bring out our everything and put it on the table and now look at it. Okay, this is we should keep this.
Yeah.
We should discard this and we should go ahead. There are different ways of doing it. Maybe we can get intense about it because some of those things are really close to us for many number of years, and suddenly you realize, okay, it is not required. You need to discard this, so that the piece of you gets threatened. Okay, what if other things also come out and that way everything needs to be discarded? Then where is my existence? So yourself, in my case, that self, whenever it gets threatened, or the value system that I hold,
parts of yourself, not necessarily the whole of yourself.
Part of myself or the value system that I hold dear gets challenged or questioned. That time that conflict has become intense. Otherwise, I can hold my fort in any kind of disagreement or discussion of any professional nature.
I have never seen like anyone else disagree like generally with the public or like individually on platforms, social media with as much grace and presence of mind as you do.
I'm very comfortable with disagreement. I'm comfortable with professional issues. I'm comfortable with personal things also, the kind of work I do on the mind healing. So that gives me different kind of perspective in so many people's lives. And that actually helps me learn. So I actually want to thank you all the people who have shown that trust in me that I can help them in their mind healing issues. It's actually a learning process for me also. I reflect on myself, what kind of behavior I exhibit, what kind of thought process I carry, what kind of conflict resolution mechanism I deploy at different places and different point of time. So conflict for me, since my childhood, has always been avoid, run away, or just build your wall and let other person do whatever they want to. Of late, I have learned to bring out my stuff because you have given me that space to bring out, listen to me carefully, even if I get hyper sometimes, or even if I get intense or emotional about certain things. You are there holding the space. Okay, you can bring out. Okay, that never happened with me in the past. So I'm getting used to that idea of bringing my stuff and putting it out in the open. Even in public, I am able to express my emotions and deal with a conflict if the need arises. I'm not shying away from it, but at the same time, I don't unnecessarily get into it. So what happens actually, like we are talking about ourselves, but generally this is not how the conflict is formed or conflict is resolved, or how the structure of the conflict itself is so detrimental or so toxic that people generally, 99% of the people will avoid conflict if given a choice.
Yeah.
So what is your take on the world outside? Like, forget about us.
I think people the reason why you become defensive or why conflict would arise is when you feel threatened. When you feel threatened, what you want to do is take a stand for yourself, right? You want to protect yourself. You want to guard. There are parts of you that come out to protect you. Often these parts behaviorally show up as anger, or they'll show up as sadness, right? Like you'll cry about something, expecting that the other person understands that, okay, you got threatened in this situation and you're not feeling really safe. Anger is the most common behavioral symptom that comes up when defense happens. So what happens to most of us is we get tired because we have repeatedly tried to stand up for ourselves. We have repeatedly tried to show that, okay, something was violated, something was done wrong. and the other person uses bigger ammunition, the other person louder voices, harsher words, physical abuse,
More articulate arguments.
more articulate arguments, gaslighting, right? Like sometimes, like I experienced being gaslit so many times when I would try to stand for myself, and I'd be made to feel that what I was experiencing wasn't even true in the first place. It didn't happen. So over and again, if that becomes your experience, right? Like when you're trying to take a stand for yourself, either you're getting overpowered by the opponent or you're not even being heard. Like someone's telling you that it didn't happen, you're going to get exhausted of that particular way of being. So you are going to start becoming very conflict averse. Or what a lot of people do is they learn better and better. So if they got overpowered once as a child,
Yeah, they will go and search.
they will search for ways in which they can become better fighters, right? Chalo, ye martial arts fail hua, let me go try and learn this particular way of fencing and using swords and tools.
Maybe I'll bring bigger gun next time.
Let me buy bigger guns, let me do this, let me do that, right? Let me get more people on my side. So next time conflict happens, it's not just me. My sister, my friend, everyone is attacking the person, right? So it really starts getting ugly because nowhere there is someone really understanding that all that original problem needed was a solution to kind of be found. For example, this morning, right, and that's why we're talking about conflict, because we actually had a situation of professional conflict. And see, one more thing is people are very, very scared of showing their true emotions of whatever feelings they're experiencing when that conflict is happening. Whether it's guilt, whether it's shame, whether it's sadness, all of these emotions come, right? But they'll only show anger. And it just becomes like a volcano in which another volcano is feeding, and then overall it's becoming a bigger and bigger fire. So this morning, for example, you and I had like this, you said something, I perceived, like you didn't even intend it, that's separate. You didn't intend whatever words came, but I perceived it as a threat to my identity as the person here, right? Like whatever role I am in, CEO, founder, everything. In the past, what I would have done is, given how much I care about you, how much I love you, and what I know of you, who you are as a human being, I would have dismissed that internal feeling. I would have said, "Nahi, Avinash is so awesome, na? Tum kya chindi ban rahe ho?" Like, big deal. Like you just felt something, let it go, and then it would have gone. Like din bhar mein work would have happened and all of that, but that resentment would have built up. That's what has happened in the past with me, right? I've always seen that the other person to be more magnanimous, like amazing, super awesome, always, like the other person is so incredible. If I felt a way about something they said, that's my problem. How can I be so small? I better be a big person and forgive and like just forget about it. So this morning I didn't do that. This morning I made it a point, after all the team meetings were done, to bring to your attention that, hey, you said this thing, this is how it made me feel, and it's not okay to say that. Like no matter what, there's a certain structure in the company. My optimistic expectation was that when I say it to you, you will just receive it as, oh, okay, this sentence was probably wrong, and maybe in the future I'll not use words like this, and we would have gotten along in our own ways. However, your response to that feedback, I have no control on it because that's you. So your response was the opposite of what my optimistic expectation was, right? So what was your response when I said something like that?
So whatever my utterances were, I thought that some motive has been attributed to that words, and I was like, I had no motive to attach any attributes to those particular statements because I had no motive. Why would I want to put my CEO down, or why would I want to show a founder that you are not capable of being a founder, or not good enough of a founder? It was not loaded with any attributes, and that is where I perceived that some motive has been attached to something which is not attributable. And then that motive became, it went into my own belief.
I didn't say any of this. You started assuming.
I started perceiving that. I started perceiving that whatever statement I made, there is a motive attached to it. Now, since there was no motive attached to it, I obviously started feeling bad about it. How can someone say this? I didn't mean it. So, but that my intentions are not vocal. My intentions are my intentions. How will Mugdha know what my intentions were? She just heard the word. She didn't hear the intention. She can't. No one does. Right? So the intentions were, there was no bad intention. How can you attribute a bad intent to whatever I said? Then I felt sad in the way कि okay, my work itself
Because
is
you
getting,
got defensive, right? So what
my work itself got challenged. कि whatever I'm doing, then I have to be extra careful. Then what is the point of being a CEO or head of sales or leading a team? I do so many things, and everywhere motive is attached to whatever I say or whatever I do. Then what is the better way of doing things? I don't know, and that is where emotions took over. And for me, it is like another world. It's not very familiar. It's not very familiar territory for me. Unlike you can deal with all sorts of emotion. For me, if I get emotional, I mean it's very unfamiliar situation, unfamiliar place, unfamiliar surrounding. So then I don't know what to do, and then I get into that mode where I start feeling victimized. Then I start feeling sad. Then I start feeling bad. Then I start feeling okay. You don't care. I also don't care. And then normally I would just shut down and go off, and then internalize it the way I'm internalizing it now. I wouldn't have said all those things if there was no podcast today, but that is how I process. Normally, I would process. This is what has happened, and maybe she is right, and maybe I can use different words, or maybe I can make my intention more clear so that you can hear it rather than only me hearing it. So that you don't have any ambiguity or any doubt in your mind that my words don't carry any intention, any bad intention. So maybe I can make my intention more clear rather than my words. So that internalization happens because I can do a lot of work. I know myself better. I know how I think. I know how I can process my things. But most of the time, when people run away from a conflict, they shut down. That should never happen. Whether you can internally process it, it's well and good. It's actually a kind of superpower. If you can't process it, sit with the partner, whosoever you're having conflict with, bring out whatever your intentions or non-intentions were. Look at all those words, actions, behavior which are under questions, and discard whatever is not possible and make your intentions clear. And maybe use it as a learning curve. Whenever you get into a similar situation, same thing doesn't get repeated. You can make new mistake. There is no way you are going to be perfect with, okay, this time I told you this is what I don't like to hear, so I may not do these kind of mistake again. They're bound to happen. You're bound to come up with different situation, different words might hurt you at different point of time, but the same thing will not happen. And that is what I do. That is how I internalize, how I grow myself, how I use it to upgrade my game so that I don't get into same situation again, because I don't like to be in that situation either.
But anyway, I mean, this morning, now you've done all the post-processing, right? So this morning in the period of conflict, where I was actually really in a good place in terms of, I had stated what had impacted me and whatever emotions were flowing, I was okay with that. You were getting overwhelmed. I could see that. The vein here was popping up and then I could see your eyes also, there were tears coming up and your body was shaking. So that progression from where you were, because that is the flip point, right? That's where most people will flip and get angry and start yelling and try to shut down the person who triggered them in the first place. Now you've done the processing now. In that moment, how were you still able to look for what I was also attempting to do, which is a solution for something in the future again, right? How were you able to do that? What really happened?
So I think it's more of a practice. It's more of how I don't want to lose my calm. I don't want to lose my peace, because that years of programming, the conflicts are fruitless. The conflicts are not good. Conflicts can only lead to blood, but that comes back. I don't want to mess things up, make it more messy, make it more difficult for other people to reconcile, because all said and done, these conflicts are supposed to be a stepping stone to something good or something better in future. And when those past programming comes back to haunt me, Then I try to calm down. Okay, now something is coming from the past, asking me, okay, this can lead to bad stuff, this can lead to bloodbath, this can lead to wrong things being said or wrong things being. So actually, my past programming comes to help me here.
Okay.
It's fruitless. Don't
Experience itself.
don't escalate. There is no point doing that. And that is where it remains sane for me to some extent. I get emotionally overwhelmed because something I believe in, something I didn't do, I'm being accused of that. So yes, it's an emotional thing for me. At the same time, those past experiences tells me it is fruitless to get into conflict. It needs to be processed in a different way. It needs to be, again, that masculine energy comes in. You have to look for a solution. What is the solution? Apologize. Say that you're going to work on it because it's a professional conflict and you're superior to me in all sense. So that kind of thought process comes. And I worked in organization for many number of years. I've dealt with all kinds of people. I've dealt with superior, ego-driven bosses to down-to-earth, very pleasing kind of bosses. So I've dealt with many of them. I had my fair share of conflict. I've suffered for it. I have lost my promotion in Indian Oil because I had a conflict with my boss. So I've seen all that. Like, I'm not averse to conflict. I just don't see the point of getting into a conflict and escalating it. Till the time I want to be with that person even after a conflict. So I won't get into a conflict with a rickshaw. I'm not going to see him again in my entire life, most probably, unless he is already programmed to follow me. Metrics, food stuff. But I would definitely get into some sort of conflict with you because I see you, I see a future with you, I want to be with you. So that choice is that all that thought process happens in that period. So it's more emotional because it is with you. If it is outside, I will just shut it either from his side or from my side and move on. And I won't even bother ki kya hua, what other person has felt or what I felt. I won't get depleted there. I won't feel. So I see an outcome with you, so I engage with you. I don't see outcome, I don't take.
But did you feel depleted today then? I didn't, because for me it was like, I actually felt good that I could stand up for myself and stand my ground with the possible risk that you might say that fuck this shit. I quit. I don't want to work with iThrive anymore, and I don't want to be. So my brain always looks for you know this about my brain,
extreme
right?
situation.
Extreme worst case scenario my brain looks for, also because of the stuff that I've survived. My brain is always preparing me for, like, this is the worst possible thing that can happen. Are you sure you still want to do this? So my brain had already made that full multiple mind map timelines, right? Like, one is it will go, the most optimistic thing is like this way. The worst possible pessimistic scenario is like Avinash is going to be like fuck you and like just walk out, and like, will I be still able to do this work and all of that, right? So I was in both places simultaneously, still okay with either of the options, knowing that no matter what, I just had to stand up for myself. Because had I not done that for myself, I would have felt like shit afterwards. So I didn't feel depleted at all after that conversation, right? Maybe if my pessimistic scenario had come true, I would have felt bad. I did feel bad in the sense that somehow it did cause you pain, right? The conversation. Like, I could see it was painful for you. So I felt bad about that. Like, I wish the pain wasn't there for him, right? So like that. Did I feel bad about talking about it? No. Right? Like, if I could, let's say, go back in time, would I have avoided bringing this point up, whatever happened in the morning? No, I would have still done that. Only thing was, I wish you hadn't gotten pained in the process, right? So that feeling of badness, not even guilt, not shame, just a very deep sense of, like, more from a place of compassion. Like, you saw another being suffer because of your action. Like, you did something for yourself, but another being suffered as an outcome of that. So that's how I felt at the end of it.
So many people avoid conflict for this reason also. Like a couple of our team members mentioned, I don't get into conflict because other person get hurt. So how do we deal with that? Like, how, as a person, as an individual?
I did that, Avinash, for so many years. See,
So how do you take that call whether to get into a conflict or not at that moment, because you're feeling threatened, you're feeling challenged, you're feeling something which needs to come out. And that moment, are you in a best of the position to decide whether to call it out or whether to let it go?
See, I've taken a very distinct, like I've made that internal decision that I'm never going to let myself down, any part of me, right? And I think 2022 was mostly a lesson in that, about not abandoning myself, no matter how small that part of, like how childlike it felt. Even if it felt like a 1-year-old child, right? I made like this call, I don't know when, but now I can see that like through 2022, now I started doing more and more of that. Like 2 days ago, I told someone off for taking the coffee I had brewed for myself. Someone might say like, oh, you're the CEO of the company, a coffee, you can just order from Starbucks, na? So what about it? But that, right, like taking a stand for myself, no matter what the situation, is something I've started doing for myself. Another person might feel hurt, another person might want to label me, another person might want to like get pissed. Not my problem, is where I am at right now. Because for 38 years of my life, I was always considering other people's feelings, other people's reactions, other people's what will they do if I really say this? How are they going to feel? They'll feel shattered, they'll feel broken. I did that for 38 years. 2017 is where I started making small decisions for myself, like walking out of the marriage and coming back to India, right? But even that wasn't done with the dignity and the courage I have now. It was more like an escape. I told my ex-husband then that like, oh, I'm just going for 3 months and I might come back, kind of a thing, right? Now I know I'll just say that like, it's over, I can't be here anymore. So if you ask me now, I've become really ruthless and selfish in the best kind of way. Those two words, I think, have been so maligned in the mainstream world. Like I had a client call yesterday, and he had the same thing. Like he wanted to make his food in a certain way, and he wasn't being allowed to do so because of whatever reasons. And he didn't want to fight. And I told him, if you don't fight for yourself, who's going to fight for you, right? So start doing it. Start putting your foot down. Start making the food you want the way like you want. And then he said, but that is selfish. And I said, so what? What is wrong about being selfish? And that like opened up his like, he's like, wow, this suddenly has opened up something in my head, right? Like it's okay to be selfish. So now, to answer your original question, I've really become someone who is not going to sit and ponder too much, oh, but this person will feel like this, then what will happen, and all of that, as much as I have started caring about saying what is on my mind, but being there for the person while they're experiencing the fallout of whatever they might experience. Like I was there for you, right? You experienced such a vast range of emotions, you experienced so many things. So I didn't say what I had to and leave from there and walk out. I was there for you. And you had the good sense to see that I was supporting whatever was happening to you. A lot of people can't hold that space, right?
Because they are not capable.
Huh.
They're themselves going through an emotional trauma because they're being triggered for whatever reason.
Yeah.
The conflict happened because they were triggered with something. Whether it is right, wrong, correct, not correct, that is secondary. They got triggered. They're in their own emotional space where they're dealing, fighting, or, because most of us are trained not to show emotions. So when you get emotional, you're in that unknown zone, whether you're not sure what is next. आगे क्या है? अभी मैं आगे इधर. What next? So based on our experiences, we choose to get into a conflict, stand for yourself, which might lead to conflict and which might force you to look at different scenarios, including the best one and the worst one. That is one way of, maybe the ideal way of doing things. Second is you avoid conflict based on your experiences, your past experience, because you don't see an outcome of that conflict. Nothing is going to come out of it, and you just want to shun yourself. Maybe you devise some mechanism by which you're able to process whatever thoughts, emotions you were experiencing. Most of us don't do either of these things. Most of us just run away from the conflict or block themselves from the emotion.
So typically in conflict, there are 4 modes that human beings adopt, right? You spoke of the fight, flight, freeze, and I added the fawn thing. So what's the fight thing? We all know, right? Like conflict, fighting, synonymous. Flight is what you said you would do. You'd run away from conflict. You really wouldn't want to be there. Like just get out of that situation, right? So that's like you leave that entire thing. The problem with that is if this person with whom the conflict began with is going to be part of your life, and you run away from the conflict, when you come back again, it's going to arise multiple times.
Yes.
So you can't keep running away, or you completely run away from this person. The third is freeze. What's the freeze response?
You just don't listen. Like, you block yourself.
You've blocked, you've emotionally numbed yourself.
You're not available.
You're just not available, right? Like completely frozen to that situation, to what's being said, because you've gone inward somewhere. Not the healthiest way to coexist with another human being, right? Because your freeze response also freezes your entire nervous system. It's not, our nervous system starts getting dysregulated if you're doing that. The fourth one, the fawn one that I spoke of, can you guess what the fawn response is?
No. I don't know.
So fawn, the word is like you're fawning over someone. You know that, hi, aap to kitne pyare ho, that response, right? So that's the fourth response that humans have. Animals don't do the fawn response, which is you start bending over backwards, you start people pleasing, you start overcompensating, you start surrendering. The minute you see the possibility of a conflict, you go into that fawn mode, which is what I used to do. Be extra sweet, be extra nice, do something like bring a gift, cook something and give, right? That's never going to work because you are doing that at the cost to yourself, right? So how much are you going to surrender? How much are you going to bend over backwards? How much are you going to like really fawn over this person, fall at their feet? I think you did that also in terms of the conflict response, like just fawning, like just trying to make the person happy and just like, trying to be this nice, amiable guy who has, guy, girl, whatever, who like, bolna hai wo bolo jhel lenge kind of a thing, right? All four are very, very unhealthy patterns of existing in conflict because they don't create solutions, right? And they create something that is worse for you, which is a super dysregulated nervous system, which impairs your ability to deal with life on the whole, right? Like that's where anxiety starts coming in. That's where these looping thoughts, intrusive thoughts, depression. OCD, depression, all of this starts coming in. Now, ideal scenario is you stand up for yourself, you speak for yourself, you use language as a method of communication, you acknowledge all the feelings that are happening with you. And if the other person in that situation is really not capable of such a mature level of conversation, you have the option of setting a very strong boundary and leaving that person or that kind of a situation for good, right? My only caveat with this, like, see with children, I'm a little different around this, especially like if my daughter, with her, I'm not going to sit and like stand my ground and like, be very forceful about the things I believe in and all of that. Because her mind is maturing, she herself is going through her stuff. In her case, in a young mind's case, I don't want to unnecessarily create too much pain. As an adult, I can allow that to happen in the context of, okay, you're an adult, even if you're experiencing pain because of me taking a stand for myself, you will be able to process it and deal with it. With a child, I think children need a little extra grace, and that's what we're supposed to do as adults also, right? So what's your take on that?
So I've dealt with my kids in a different, like I was, yesterday only in one of the session I was talking about that attached detachment kind of thing. So I don't get unnecessarily trouble unless someone is using them against me. Is normally my partner, ex-partner who does that. And that is where I see them as a potential threat to my being, and not on their own they're like the cutest and the loveliest being. But if they're being manipulated, being used as a weapons, then I have to again, my self-protection mechanism will go up, and I set boundaries, I block, I do whatever it takes to protect myself or my interest. So that is what I do with my kids. With other kids, I most of the time I avoid.
There is no conflict actually with other kids.
I
Kids are
know,
the cutest.
I know. I don't have any issues with others' kids.
No, I
because
think it's
they're-
only with our own
it's-
children that there's
No,
conflict.
it's like any outsider. Like it's like another rickshawala I'm dealing with. I don't have any opinion either for or against them. They exist on their
Yeah, but I
their
think
own.
children need to be given extra grace when it comes to this, because sometimes they might be testing their own boundaries, right? So they might use you
For
as
your
a,
children,
yeah.
you can give extra grace or whatever you want to do. With other children, I don't have any opinion. You can do whatever you want. I mean, not whatever you want, you can do. But just that you deal with your kids by understanding how capable or incapable they are of dealing with emotions or conflict. Make sure that you don't leave any kind of imprint on them based on your conflict resolution mechanism. Let them choose on their own. Let them figure out how the conflict needs to be resolved. Because if you bring your own flight, freeze, fawn, or any kind of responses, they are going to copy you, or they're going to do exactly opposite of whatever you're doing. So, as a parent, that is the only precaution we have to take, that we don't unnecessarily try to imprint them with, okay, you do this way or you do that way and you do exactly opposite. That applies to all kinds of teaching that most of the modern parents get into. So that is.
I remember one parent who tried to get, this is going into parenting from conflict, but also that's where a lot of conflict happens, right? Like it's parent-child relationship. I remember one parent reaching out to us saying, hey, I want to make my child eat healthier, and like he is eating so much junk food and
So much of screen time.
Screen time, he thought it was like biscuits and he ate chips and all of that. And then I remember somebody from the team having that call with them. And they were like, why do you want them to eat healthier, right? And it's better for their health, they're gaining weight. So she asked them, where are all these things coming from? Chips and all of that. Like the kid doesn't have money, right? So, we only are buying. So she said, why are you buying? Thoda to I want to eat na. So here you're trying to teach your child to not eat any crap, but you are saying it's okay for you to indulge in it occasionally. You're buying it, you're stocking it up, and you're demonstrating completely opposite behavior. Then you're asking your child to behave in a certain way. Obviously, conflict is going to happen. The child is going to be like, fuck, who are you?
You are eating, and how can you stop me?
So there is also that, like, we sometimes might want our partners or our employees or our teams or our colleagues to behave in a certain way because we think that's the best way of behaving, while you do not have the moral authority to make that ask because you are completely opposite of that. So the things that you might actually want in yourself, you're trying to project it for other people, and that other person is going to be like, fuck no, like, why should I? So that's a source of conflict, right? So conflict can happen for many reasons. What we spoke about in the last 30-35 minutes was mostly from a really individualistic, very self-aware, self-conscious place, because as I gave this parent-child example, I realized that some people are not even in the place where we are when it comes to conflict, right? That basic conflict can be like, look at that girl, how she is dressed, I want my wife to be dressed like that. And the wife will be like, well, I'm not even comfortable in those kind of clothes, right? So could be coming from there. That's absolute unconscious conflict. Like I can't even relate to that anymore. Like anymore, what now? Not even in the past can I relate to that, right? But that's like, I don't know what tools one would have there, where like a parent is forcing a child to say, "Beta, गाना सुना के दे दो."
I have zero opinion.
Yeah, like I don't know.
No views on how parents deal with their kids. Most of them deal with them as their investment and property. And I have absolutely no attachment to any investment.
Yeah, so the conflict things that we spoke of, or the strategies that we personally have used, are really at a conscious level, a level of awareness that, okay, like something's bothering me, this is about me, and I need to sort it out for myself, and in doing so, I might trigger another person. Their defense mechanisms will get activated. If they do, we might have a fight. If we have a fight, here is how we are going to try and navigate around this. And after all of that, we'll still be there for each other to repair and ease each other's pain.
And today we set an example for our team also. If you get into a conflict with your partner, this is how you can deal with. And word of appreciation for all of them. They come up with some idea.
Yeah.
They want a cake and my favorite food just to make me feel better. And thank you, team. This is what everyone should be doing in case of conflict: buy their favorite food and resolve the conflict amicably.
No, at an organizational level, no. See, we have a very different culture and we have such open space for emotions and everything. But other organizations, things happen, no one talks, and then it becomes politics.
Politics.
Right? So I could have gone and incited your team against you. You could have used your team against me.
So there is no my team, it's all your team.
Whatever, you know what I mean, right? Like they got you a cake. So, whatever, they're reporting to you. So it is, in a sense, your team, the people
I am
you're
part of
working
your team.
I know, Avinash. I'm just using it as an example of how how it happens in other organizations, right? When you start, ye mera army, ye tumhara army, right? So, and then suddenly there'll be like arrows shot and you won't even know what came at you. So that's what office politics really is about. Unresolved conflict that takes another form and becomes really ugly. So don't avoid conflict. It's bound to happen where two humans exist, but there are ways of dealing with it with a lot of beauty and creating something good out of it. And that was like, out of that morning conflict came a cake for you and like amazing food, and that itself is like part of the
So there has to be outcome of a conflict. You can't have conflict without a cake at the end of it. Like that is icing on the cake after the conflict.
So yeah, so that's about it. I think the team also learned something today.
Yes, I think we did parenting lessons. We showed, and rather than telling them, we showed them. Okay, deal with your conflict like this. And thank you very much. We are end of there. I don't have anything more to share. But if you have any queries on this particular topic of conflict, we can talk more. Do send us your comment, reply, feedback. Keep following us, sharing our content, and letting us know how you feel by watching this. Thank you very much.
All right. Bye bye.